Hi, I'm Margie, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I've set up my camera a little bit differently so you can see more of my kitchen and you can watch me do some cooking. I was doing it so you just saw the bowl and saw me stirring, but I just decided to go back to the way I used to do it and really show you what I'm doing. So I'm making English muffins today. Now yesterday I made English muffins and I went through the whole process and I actually videotaped it and did everything, but when I went to share how they tasted with you, it was like I couldn't think of any words to say because they tasted so bad. So what I've decided to do today, to do the video again and see how these come out, okay? So I'm going to start off right away by showing you what to do, the very first step. So what I have is this saucepan. I'm just going to put 1 cup of milk, and I'm going to bring that to a simmer, meaning I'm going to let it almost come to a boil. There'll be little tiny bubbles around the outside edge, and then I'm going to shut it off. So I'll be back in a moment, show you what to do next. And you see this is starting to come to a boil, so I'm going to shut that off. So now that you saw that it was a boil, I'm just going to pour it into a dish, and we're going to have to let this cool. It doesn't have to cool 100%, but you certainly can't add yeast to milk or to any liquid when it's that hot. One of the things we can do to help this milk cool down a little faster is I'm going to add my butter. I have 2 tablespoons of butter here, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that and let it melt in there, and that'll help to cool down the milk a little. Just a little bit of interesting information. This is active dry yeast, and they're granules. Okay, now I always thought, so I just learned something. I always thought that 1 tablespoon of this was equal to an envelope that you'd buy, the 3 envelopes that are connected together in the grocery store. But it says here 2 1/4 teaspoons are equal to 1 envelope of active dry yeast. So that's interesting. In this recipe, and that's actually what this recipe calls for, it calls for 1 1/2 teaspoons. This is 1 1/2 teaspoons of the yeast. It's not a whole envelope. Which is interesting because I thought that was one of the problems that the recipe had yesterday. It had a very unusual flavor, and I just thought that maybe it was too much yeast. One of the things we can do to help this milk cool down a little faster is I'm going to add my butter. I have 2 tablespoons of butter here, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that and let it melt in there, and that'll help to cool down the milk a little. Okay, so my milk is cool enough. You'd be very surprised to know how hot this really can be. I can't really think of the temperature, maybe 108 or something like that degrees Fahrenheit. But if you can stick your finger in there and just hold it in there and it's really hot, that's actually okay. You'd be surprised how really warm that this liquid can be. Now this is my, what did I say, 1 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top. And I'm going to use a fork to mix it in. And here I have 2 teaspoons of this is 2 teaspoons of sugar and a little less than 1/4 teaspoon of salt because it called for unsalted butter and I didn't have that. So whenever it calls for unsalted butter, I'm always amazed that the recipe sometimes calls for salt. So I just cut back on the salt. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle that in too. And we're just going to let that dissolve. So this is what it looks like with all the ingredients in there, the yeast, the salt, the sugar, and butter. And I'll show you what it looks like when the yeast is all done dissolving. It takes about 5 minutes. So that's what it looks like after 5 minutes. So now I'm going to add the egg. I just have 1 egg here that I took a fork and I beat it pretty well. I'm just going to add that. I have 3 cups of flour here. I'm going to take 1 cup out and I'm going to just put it in my dish. And I'm going to add my yeast mixture, which is still nice and warm. Okay. I'm going to add that to my 2 cups of flour about. I'm going to use all of it. I'm going to use all that flour. I just like to start off a little bit slower when I'm adding the ingredients together. Okay? Then I'm going to let this rest for an hour. Just added the rest of the flour. I'm not really, you don't have to knead this. I'm just bringing it together. I'm going to cover it with a piece of saran wrap and let it sit for an hour. Dough is actually still a little bit warm. If you could feel underneath, you'd see it. You can't feel that, but if you could feel it, you'd know it's still nice and warm. Okay, so we'll see how it looks in an hour. So are you ready to see what it looks like now? It's been about an hour, and that's it now. So I'm going to press it down, and I'll let it sit for a couple of minutes. Just press it down. Get some of that gas out of it. Okay, so I'm going to take this dough out of my pan, out of my bowl. And I'm going to put it on my table. Sprinkle a little flour on it. You don't want this to stick. Take my oh so small rolling pin. And roll it out to about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to use this glass to cut round circles. I was thinking about making them square, but I don't want to freak anybody out. I never saw a square English muffin, but so we'll just go ahead and cut some circles. To place them on my cookie sheet. This is a piece of parchment paper and I folded it. I'm just going to set them on my cookie sheet. Cover them up. I'm going to roll out the rest of this dough. I'm going to sort of squish it together a little. You can tell already it's a little, not, well, tougher. I hate to use the word, but it's not quite as squashy as the first time I rolled it out. Here are my pans I'm going to use. This is a heavy bottom, large pan. If you have a big griddle, that's good too. And then this is a cast iron skillet, because that's what I've got. Okay? So I'm going to put my flames on low just to get them started. If you have a pancake griddle or something like that, that might work really well for these. But these have to cook for 7 minutes on each side, and you don't want them to cook too quickly. So I want them to be very, very low, the flame's low, and the pan's not too hot. I may turn them up a little bit as we go. We'll just take a look at them. Okay. Now we're going to need a little bit of oil. So I'm just going to keep my oil out and get a brush. So here's my brush, just a pastry brush. Also, I have a little flipper spatula, metal spatula. And now we're just going to wait. I'm going to pour a little oil in each pan, and we'll just brush it around a little bit. And then I'm going to take a, yeah, the pans are pretty hot, huh? So I'm going to take a paper towel. So we're not frying these. Okay, these pans are pretty hot. So I'm going to go ahead and place them in. I'm going to try to cook them all at one time. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. There we go. Hope they don't get too big. So we'll actually put I'm going to put this on 7 minutes. See what happens. We have to check them to make sure they're not getting too dark. But I have them on very low. I just want to show you what they look like. Oop, they're sliding around. These have about 2 more minutes on this side, and I can tell that they're not, I don't know, I don't like to pick it up, but they're getting really very pretty. But I'm just going to turn the flame up just a little bit. Just a little. Okay, so I'm going to turn these over. I wish you could feel these. They're so awesome. Turn it back down again. And we'll cook them for another 7 minutes. The recipe says they want you to squash them down, but I don't have the nerve to do that, so I'm not doing it. I'm going to take these out. You can pretty much pick them up with your fingers. The cast iron skillet seems to cook a little faster than the other pan. That's 7 minutes, and there's the other pan. See, you pretty much just pick these up with your fingers. It's kind of amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and take these out. Ouch, ouch. So when you open up an English muffin, you're supposed to use two forks and put them back to back and kind of go that way and open up an English muffin. Okay, so stick it in the side and you just kind of go like that, and you go around. You open it up and then you toast them. Okay. I have a little rack. I'm going to toast them because I don't want them to get more toasted on the bottom. Okay, so my muffin's toasted. There we go. A Margie English muffin. So far, they seem better than the ones I made last night. Of course, I have to have my orange marmalade, Trappist Monk orange marmalade is the best. We'll try it without the marmalade. Those have a much better flavor. Those are good. Those are good. I couldn't think of anything nice to say about the ones I made yesterday. So, I hope you give these a try. Let me know what you think. And I'll be back again soon. Bye.